Welcome to episode 12 of Smells Like Teen Parent, a podcast for adolescents and the adults who annoy them. I'm your host, Jenny DeBevic, a nationally certified counselor and academic consultant with 20 years of experience working with youth. In the last episode, we explored anxiety and mindfulness. And in this episode, we're diving into the science behind the value of humor in parenting. You will hear from guest expert on humor, Michael O'Brien, comedian, actor, teacher, writer, and public radio host who builds stronger relationships through humor and improvisation. You will also hear from teens themselves. Are your parents funny?
Yes, both of them. They tickle me. They let me go in the pool.
Oh, my mom. It's always very unintentional. Like, she'll just say something like, what is going on through your head right now? Like, it's very, either she tries to be too, teenager, and I'm like, Mom, I love it. You're so funny, though. You're really funny, but stop.
Please rate, share, and download this episode. Downloading helps raise our data analytics and spread the word to our local and international communities. Your downloads allow me to create more frequent content about topics that matter. This episode is brought to you in part by NextPhase.ai. NextPhase.ai improves the quality and reliability of your enterprise data. Their service-led technology solutions are tailored to achieve your business outcomes. With over 300 global resources and 400 cloud certifications, NextPhase.ai helps you eliminate unplanned delays, overburdened data engineers, and audit findings. Transform your business with NextPhase Data Operations Services. Before we delve into the research data, let's start with a fascinating fact. Kids laugh 200 to 300 times a day, while adults laugh only 15 to 20 times a day. So how can we up our laughing game and harness the power of humor in parenting? There's so many good reasons to keep laughing through those tears. Studies have shown that laughing with your teen releases oxytocin and dopamine, those same chemicals released during some of the most delicious life experiences: giving birth, achieving a significant milestone in your life, watching a favorite movie with a close friend, or experiencing intimacy. This natural release of feel-good chemicals strengthens emotional bonds and creates positive connections.
Are your parents funny?
Oh, I think my dad more than my mom, but there can be times when I think my mom is silly. I texted my mom today because during work, because has a crush on a boy at camp and tried to slip him a note, but you cannot say anything to her. And then she was like, great, I'm boyfriended out. Yeah.
So it sounds like your mom and you had this moment where you were relating to each other about your sister.
Yeah, totally.
Moreover, humor has been found to increase pain tolerance and reduce stress. By sharing laughs, adult caregivers and teens can alleviate tension and create a more relaxed environment for open communication and problem solving.
My dad always tries to make it just very humorous, just to go through life and everything. Even for serious topics, it's always been let's try and lighten it the best we can. And I think it's good because it gives you a more positive outlook on things instead of always diving into the negative. I think having a good humorous outlook is a good way of moving on quickly, which is honestly a really good skill. And
the impact of humor in parenting goes beyond personal connections. Researchers have found that humor can foster a feeling of trust between parents and teens. But oftentimes, we're so busy being the boss of our kids that we forget to let our guard down and connect with them in an authentic way. Here's a parallel example. One study discovered that workers were more likely to trust a complete stranger compared to their own boss because their boss failed to use humor in their daily interactions with workers. Now, imagine yourself as boss of your family. As parents, developing a humorous approach can create a more trusting and empathetic relationship with our young people.
Are your parents funny too, or is it just you?
Okay, my parents have very different senses of humor from each other, but my brother and I both have my dad's sense of humor, which is it's dumb humor almost. Messing with each other is funny to us. They're just really dumb things. It's stuff like that. Dad jokes almost. But my mom has, she says that she has sophisticated humor. The things we think are funny, but she thinks other things are funny, things that are actually funny.
To get ready for this episode, I wanted to understand what sort of science was out there on the psychology of humor. So I read a lot of, pretty boring research studies that left me kind of wanting to drop an anvil on my head. But here's the summary. One extensive study found that humor amongst peers is also a complex dynamic that can encourage either coping skills or aggression. connection. According to Dr. Rod A. Martin, an expert in the value of humor, it not only boosts positive emotions, but also counteracts negative moods like depression and anxiety. Humor serves as a valuable mechanism for coping with stressful life events and enhancing satisfying interpersonal relationships. In other words, humor serves to reduce a parent's anger while diffusing tension in the child. It's a win-win. Parenting styles can also influence how humor might be employed in the parent-teen relationship. There's 3 basic parenting types that are commonly recognized. Permissive parenting, where parents are emotionally warm but reluctant to enforce rules or standards. This style can lead to parents feeling worn down by their kids' demands. We've all been there, right? Authoritative parenting. This is a style that's characterized by mindful management of your own energy to set and maintain boundaries. This parenting style strikes a balance and has a better chance of maintaining a humorous attitude with the kids. But yes, it does require a lot of energy. And then there's authoritarian parenting, where parents exert total control and impose harsh discipline, sometimes using sarcastic or mocking humor. Children raised in such homes may develop chronic stress or anxiety.
Parents who are serious are the funniest. And in my opinion, the funniest thing is when someone takes himself so seriously. We're all going to end up in the ground anyway, so it's not that serious. It's really not that big of a deal. It's going to be okay. People who are like constantly think they're the best and like, which is happens in a lot of adults, and who like, you know, have a sense of like narcissism about themselves because there's like a lot of insecurity. They're so funny.
No matter what our dominant parenting style, using humor effectively is crucial, especially when dealing with behavioral issues associated with teens, including those with ADHD, oppositional defiance disorder, or conduct disorder. Also, it's essential to remember that laughter should always be about the situation, not about the person, to avoid shaming and fostering a positive and supportive environment. But the magic of humor goes beyond our parent-teen relationships. Research has shown that different age groups have distinct tastes in humor, and adolescents in particular use humor to bind and define their peer groups. They might dismiss younger kids' humor as stupid, or even use humor to distance themselves from very uncool parents and other authority figures. But it's all part of their eye-rolly journey to discover their own identity and independence.
Are your parents funny?
Nah.
Are you funny?
I think I'm hilarious. So
That's enough funniness in the family.
yeah.
How about your sister? Is she funny?
Eh,
Oh, okay.
so
You're the funny one. Do you wish they were more funny?
maybe, I don't know. Sometimes when they try to be funny, it's a little too cringe. So
My dad is always trying so hard to be so great and the best. I mean, everything my mom does makes me laugh. She's so funny. Like she doesn't even realize I don't think I've ever heard her make a joke, but she's so funny.
Now here's where it gets interesting. Not all types of humor have the same effect on teens. Some humor types, like aggressive, making fun of someone, and slapstick humor, pie in the face, can be associated with real life aggression. But fear not, there's a positive side too. There's a third type of humor called coping humor, which is super important for teens' development. It serves as a coping mechanism to deal with life's difficulties by joking about frustrations and hardships. Humor not only benefits the parent-teen relationship, but also plays a role in enhancing emotional well-being and building stronger connections. It helps parents navigate the complexities of parenting, fostering a sense of trust and understanding. But don't just take my word for it. Let's check in with Michael O'Brien, a comedian, writer, actor, and teacher who helps people of all ages get in touch with their funny bone and their heart. His improv workshop is one of the longest in the world. All right, well, thank you for joining me today. I'm sorry about the sound booth overheating, but I appreciate you meeting me out here outside. And just to let you know, we're dealing with some sound stuff that comes from being outside in the world. But improvisation, right? Well,
exactly. You have to be flexible when it comes to improvisation and to parenting. My life has been comedy, improvisation, writing, acting, and teaching.
I'm looking at where the humor and the teaching and the parenting overlap.
First of all, I'm not an expert on parenting. Now, I am the parent, or was a parent, of a teenage boy. He's now a fine adult. And I think that one of the early ways that humor came into it was just how we bonded. And it was through silliness and playing. And I was more than willing to go there. I was thinking this week as Paul Rubens, Pee Wee Herman passed away, and I remember we used to watch Saturday mornings Pee Wee Playhouse together, and we would laugh. And then later on, we'd also share in watching Seinfeld, and both of those shows had humor for young people and for adults as well. And I think that helped us in a lot of ways bring together and help develop a sense of humor and just a way of looking at life that, yeah, it's absurd and funny. There are some funny things in life.
What makes something funny?
That's a great question. I go back to the E.B. White quote about dissecting a frog. You can see what the parts are, but it loses its top. And I think if you overanalyze humor, that's what happens. Something that's funny to one person is not funny to another person. There are different elements, surprise, things that are surprise. You think something's going one way and it goes another way.
You know, this podcast is not just for biological parents, but for all adult caregivers who participate in the raising of adolescents.
Yes.
And, you know, whether that's as a teacher, as a step-parent, as a partner, as a neighbor, right? There's all different ways that we relate to adolescents and teenagers. And you had mentioned something about bonding, like how humor helps support that bond with teenagers. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about how you see humor bonding different people.
People feel more comfortable when they're around people who are smiling and laughing, unless it's crazy. If you can invoke laughter, it is disarming. And I think that helps people to bond. Tense things that happen, right, in parenting, especially of a teen. Humor can sometimes disarm that tension, so then you can get to a place where you can then really talk about what's going on.
I remember hearing from a teacher saying, I never smile at the kids until October. And I think about that sometimes because when I go in and I talk to kids, I think that the fear is that if you smile or if you laugh or if you are silly, that you're somehow going to lose control.
If you were the parent of 30 kids, what you would have in a classroom maybe, and maybe you would feel differently about smiling and laughing.
It's also an old model, right? Of just like smiling and laughing is that vulnerability.
Yes.
It undermines your authority.
Yeah. There's so many different kinds of humor, and I never have thought about, I'm doing an act when I'm around my loved ones, right? Like I'm not performing. You're just being yourself, and humor comes out, right? I happen to like and fall into a lot of self-effacing humor, where I'm making fun of myself. It can be considered victimless humor. I'm not making fun of someone else. I'm poking fun at myself, and I think that helps with parenting because it's saying to your child, hey, I'm not perfect. Now, okay, I may be in charge because I'm the parent, but I am not perfect, and I make mistakes too. These are things I've done, and I think it just helps to disarm what can be more of a fighting.
Power struggle.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's such an important point because I think parents are often afraid of, if I show that I don't have it all figured out, teenagers know and adolescents know that their parents aren't perfect, but it's almost like parents are afraid to give up that ghost, because if they do, then the whole system might just come crumbling to the ground, and then who's running the show?
Right. And we're all making it up as we go along, right?
Truly.
With parenting, I mean, you can read tons of books, you can listen to great podcasts like your own, which is so informative and so helpful.
Parents are off their pedestal. What I see is that parents are often afraid to acknowledge that as well. And so I see that really contributing to the power struggle between teens and parents.
For me, where that relates to comedy, it actually relates more to improvisation, and that is one of the most important parts of improvisation is listening. I think as a parent, it's really important to, quote, read the room, quote, the room being your children. Is this the time to say, hey, yeah, I did this when I was your age, or I did this later on, or is this the time to play a little bit more of a character where, yeah, I do know what's going on and this is what I think you should do, or even insist this is what you should do. That might sound pretty strict. I think it's important to listen. A lot of times too, I learned this is that with parenting is, and maybe this is from watching as we grew up, all the TV shows where parents were represented, families were represented, where there's always a lesson in it, at least one lesson, right? Quite often the show end up with some sort of lesson that you're supposed to learn. One of the most important things and something that gets overlooked is just listening. A lot of times your kids just want to be heard. They just want you to listen. They don't want to hear.
They really don't want to hear you dispel lessons at them. Do you think there's some parents that are just funny?
Yeah, I think funniest stuff doesn't happen on stage. It happens when you're around the people you love. And it's just, there's a natural humor. I think everybody is funny. Everybody is funny. And
I agree.
Yeah, the natural humor that comes out. And kids are especially funny. And it doesn't have to do with jokes, although, when you remember, like when your young child learns about a joke and they're so excited to tell a joke. And it's just wonderful. And there's a lot going on to be able to even grasp the concept of a joke. Everybody's funny. The natural humor is the absolutely the best.
Parents are stressed. It's non-traditional, non-nuclear families. Parents are working more, longer hours, lots of stresses. How do parents maintain their sense of humor despite all these stresses?
Carve out time for yourself and for the whole family. Take those vacations. Wonderful stuff happens. You get everybody out of their element. You're in a different situation. You're relaxed. You're not at work. You're not in school. You're seeing maybe new things together for the first time. You go on a road trip or you go on a family vacation, there'll be tension there too, but it's different than, like, say, the tension you have at home in a normal week. And people remember that.
Comedy is tragedy plus time?
Yeah. The other thing they say is that dying is easy, comedy is hard.
What are some of the ways that when you're teaching that you see adults changing as they take your classes? How do they kind of infuse their daily lives with more humor?
I see people change all the time, and I see them surprise themselves. As far as comedy goes, I see them be surprised by, they'll say something not intending to be funny, not meaning for it to be humorous, and they'll get a big laugh. And I think that surprises and delights them. That, like, oh, I that wasn't meant as a joke, but yet it's getting, it's getting laughs and stuff. It's evoking. So I think it helps people get in touch with their own. It's not personality as much as maybe their point of view, their voice, and that's so important for comedy.
And I think parents put so much pressure on themselves. If I don't raise this kid like this, and that's part of our cultural values, and according to like all of this, family of origin stuff, that we have to raise our kids to be this or that, or a doctor, or a lawyer, or a binary, or a married, or whatever those values are. But at the end of the day, like, this is such a creative act.
It is creative. I've done a lot of work in commercials and marketing and advertising, and they have done studies, and they know that comedy, the reason comedy is used in advertising a lot is that people pay attention, or it gets their attention.
Even more than fear-based marketing.
Yes, yeah. And although that sometimes is good in parenting. So studies have shown that comedy really helps to get people's attention, get the consumer's attention. Well, I think that's true for parenting too. If you can be lighter sometimes, or humorous, it will get your child's attention, and then you can lead into more of a real discussion about some of the deeper, maybe more painful issues and stuff, and vice versa. That works for children as well. When they use humor, it gets your attention, the parent's attention, and that can help guide you into talking and a discussion.
Right, and their knock-knock jokes of the 5-year-old, 6-year-old, 7-year-old knock-knock jokes are their way of getting your attention and saying, hey, recognize me.
Yes, and it's delightful. My father used to tell the corniest jokes, but I still remember. I remember with fondness. It's like, because he would delight in telling them.
And maybe that's it, right? It's just like finding the delight in what we're doing on a daily basis.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not all just college applications,
right?
Deadlines and make us proud.
Mm-hmm. And what did you learn today? Viola Spolin and improvisation for the theater is the Bible of improvisational comedy. And her work started, she was involved with a lot of children, very young children who had come to the United States, and English was not their first language. This is not they're in a foreign land, this is not their culture, and it was to help them learn the language, for one thing, and also to socialize and be more relaxed. A lot of the games developed for children.
And children who are newcomers and whose language we don't speak. And isn't that to say, as parents, we don't often speak the language of the adolescent. Yeah. If you've ever listened to some 13-year-olds chitter-chattering, it kind of makes you want to drive a screwdriver through your head, but it's also like, it makes us, we have to be creative in how to relate to them, because we're not going to be able to relate to them according to our zeitgeist, so to speak. Yeah. They think we're terribly old and out of date.
Here's another thing Viola Spolin talked about, and that was conflict and improvisation, and how conflict was a device for generating stage energy, but it's no good unless conflict later gives way to problem solving. Well, it's pretty easy related to parenting. If it's just conflict, it's just a fight. But if the idea is that there's going to be problem solving, meaning not here I am the parent, I'm going to solve your problem, but we're going to solve our problem as a family. I think it's very helpful. Well, in the big thing of improvisation, it's always yes and. How do you get to that? How do you get to the yes part?
And that can be hard, right? Oh. Because parenting, it is painful. It's painful to watch our kids become aware and to suffer. Yeah. Like inevitably, that's this gateway of adolescence, is them walking through, being able to think abstractly, seeing the world, seeing the injustices of the world, and feeling frustrated with that, angry, hurt, self-absorbed in the way that adolescents are, and that's okay. When
it comes to comedy and performing and acting, all that, you know what I tell people? It's just be yourself. As a parent and as a teen too, just be yourself. Don't be afraid to be yourself.
What is that? I mean, like as adults, we're like, we are ourselves, but we are so, unless we really cultivate self-awareness and self-care, we're really being run by the messages and expectations of the outside world.
I agree. That's a great question. It's a lifelong search, a lifelong quest to who am I? How can I be myself? Some people grow up feel like they can be themselves. They feel like they do have to live up to all these other expectations.
Or they come from a culture that values collective thinking versus individualistic thinking, right. Which I think you and I were probably both raised, from a more individualistic culture. But it does seem like no matter what cultural background we're from, by encouraging parents to care for themselves and to, explore who they are, it allows them to develop that lightness of parenting, of just being curious about where is this going to go.
You hit on something great, and that is taking care of yourself. There is so much stress. Don't feel like you can't put it on pause a bit. Of course, when you're parenting, you really can't put it on pause, but don't feel like you're being too selfish by carving out some time for yourself or finding
to keep going faster and faster and faster. Faster and faster is not the answer.
Yeah.
It really, I know it feels like that.
Yeah.
But it's not the answer.
Yeah.
Sometimes just holding still.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And not saying anything will let the scene go where it needs to go.
So much is nonverbal. People think it's some witty duel, verbal duel between people of how can I top you with my snappy comebacks? And there's so much is communicated non-verbally.
Such strength.
Yeah,
to just stand in the silence. I guess, really, how is humor love?
Humor is love because it's a gift you're giving of yourself without fear of what you're going to get back. But you're hoping for laughter, hoping that it'll be received well, but when you do it, it's just like, I'm giving this to you. You're giving something of yourself. Also saying, life is weird. Life is weird. It is chaos. It's confusing. It's mixed up. There are times when I have no idea what the hell's going on. Yes, it's true. I'm your parent and I'm in charge of you. But, let's hope we can all get through this together.
You can also tune in to the O'Brien and Bolt podcast and learn more at themichaelobrien.com. It's no joke. The science of humor in parenting is clear. It's a powerful tool that enhances emotional well-being, strengthens relationships, and helps cope with the challenges of raising adolescents. Even if you don't consider yourself naturally funny, you can enhance a situation by breaking into laughter or into song, exaggerating a situation, speaking in an accent or a funny voice, using reverse psychology, or even busting out some costumes or props. Anything you do that changes the rhythm of the parent-child dynamic can ease tension and reconnect the two of you where it matters. When your child is expecting something else, your lecture, a stern warning, or a punishment, you can reset the tone and facilitate positive outcomes using an element of surprise. And with all the surprises of parenting, isn't it nice when we can surprise them once in a while? Well, that's all for this episode of Smells Like Teen Parent. Thank you, Michael O'Brien, and to my student contributors who are getting ready for their college applications. Join me for the next episode about transgender youth, where we're going to delve into how we as adult caregivers can build more understanding around gender identity and sexual orientation, and answer some of the common questions families have about transgender youth. Thank you to all you listeners, and for sharing, rating, and downloading this episode with your community. May you be safe, may you be healthy, may you be free from suffering, and don't forget to wear sunscreen every day.